On September 2nd, we tragically lost 34 lives when the Conception dive boat caught on fire at 3:14 a.m. off the coast of my district in California. This was the worst maritime disaster in 70 years. My condolences go out to the families of those victims. Let me say that I'm very grateful to the Coast Guard for their help in the search and rescue operations, and to the NTSB for their continued investigation into what went wrong. And while I want to recognize the Coast Guard men and women for just doing a heroic job day in and day out on their mission, and I have a number of Coast Guard service members in my district that do an outstanding job, I must say that when you look at the track record of implementing the NTSB's recommendations, it is not a good track record. And since over the years, we've seen tragedy after tragedy after tragedy happen, and the Coast Guard has a track record of inaction. While it is my understanding the NTSB is still conducting their investigation, I am disturbed by some of the reporting following this tragedy. Admiral Timmy, I'm particularly concerned by the fact that the NTSB has continuously, for many years, advocated for the Coast Guard to implement procedures to conducting regular inspections, reporting maintenance needs for all of the boats, systems, and crew training. Yet the Coast Guard has ignored many of these recommendations. What actions has the Coast Guard taken to make sure those recommendations are implemented? And why have they not been implemented to date?
Congressman, the Conception fire is a tragedy, and our hearts go out to the family of the victims. And we look forward to a full and complete investigation with the Maritime Board of Investigation. To your question with regards to the NTSB's recommendations, we work with them side by side on the investigations we do. And when we come to a recommendation, the NTSB makes a recommendation in the framework of a protocol to make a safety recommendation. We would have to take that recommendation into a different framework, into the framework of not just the recommendation itself, but the rulemaking, the guidance, the workforce, and the ecosystem it would go into. In this particular case, after the Conception, I've chartered a team to look at immediately, without waiting for the Marine Board of Investigation, but immediately to look at that class of vessels after a 30-day inspection campaign on those type of vessels, come back, look at what we found without waiting for the full MBI, and make recommendations to me regarding their findings and what needs to change in the safety framework, including rules and policy around these passenger vessels. And that includes re-looking at the National Transportation Safety Board's recommendations with regard to that. And I look forward to doing that.
Thank you. It's been brought to my attention that the Conception was working under old T, quote unquote, old T safety requirements, meaning they were not following the most up-to-date safety rules. What are some of the safety implications to continue to operate under this framework? And why do we need to wait until another tragedy to change our current safety rules?
Congressman, the old subchapter T and new subchapter T both have many vessels in the fleet that operate under those construction standards. They are valid construction standards today, as long as the vessels continue to be maintained in accordance with as constructed under that regime. To your question, we do not have to wait moving forward to look at what needs to change in that subchapter. In fact, that team I referenced will look at that, including if the Marine Board of Investigation finds that there was a point that had to do with the old construction standard, we will absolutely look at that.
Thank you. Mr. Curtis, do you care to add to that?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. Certainly, we've issued recommendations past in these areas. Particular to the conception, we're going to take a close look in this investigation at subchapter T, as the Admiral alluded to, not just for the existing and the old T, new T, but whether even the new T is adequate, whether it, as it addresses means of escape, crew responsibilities, and the likes of that. So certainly, this is a tragedy, and we're taking a close look at all these regulations, a fresh look at old subchapter T, new subchapter T, just for the validity of that very subchapter to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Thank you very much to both of you. Mr. Chair, I yield back.